first of all, like my overall mood as someone who was wary of this whole path of launching the strikes and stuff, I would say that I'm relieved that things seem to be heading towards this off ramp. I think there was a really good piece by um, Sarab Amari and Dan Caldwell, the former DoD advisor, and one other person I forget, basically outlining the two possible scenarios, one which was the off-ramp scenario and one which was the, escalatory scenario. And I'm very relieved personally that we're heading towards the off-ramp, at least for now. But what I would say, what my question would really be is like, you know, a lot of the impetus for the need to take military action against the Iranian nuclear program seems to be premised on this idea that the Iranian regime is uniquely, irrationally suicidal, because of their, Shia Muslim ideology, which, I'm not saying that you guys are saying that, but it just seems like there's a lot of that hawkish discourse in the air was premised on that. Um, doesn't this kind of disprove, like, and you saw it with this is sort of what happened with Soleimani. They had this sort of symbolic retaliation that we're seeing now. Like, doesn't this prove that there's not this complete insanity that some people allege here?
Well, maybe I'll go first, but I know
Yeah.
Dmitri and I will both have thoughts. I haven't heard many rational people making that argument that Iranians are uniquely crazy and these uniquely crazy people need to be suppressed. There is a state ideology that has translated into a strategy that Soleimani represented, and actually in the editorial, I think it was the Wall Street Journal yesterday about Netanyahu versus Soleimani, as quoted, if it was accurate, Soleimani, what he said a few months before he died is, "I've built these multiple armies, and we have a path all the way to the Mediterranean." So Iran was very strategic, and they had a goal for regional hegemony. And in my mind, they were using the threat of Israel as a vehicle to justify building these capacities, overthrowing these states, building these militias, building these nuclear capabilities. But the reason why so many of the Gulf states and others have been quietly rooting against Iran isn't because these guys think, oh, the Shias are all crazy. It's that they recognize a regional hegemonic strategy with these subparts that were being realized by Iran. And so, if it was, let's go after the most crazy group of people in the Middle East, you'd have to, frankly, bomb everybody. What this is about is denying and undermining the primary source of instability and insecurity in one of the most important strategic parts of the world.
Jamie,
Dmitry?
great. Dimitri.
I agree with that. I actually don't think any state out there, whether it's Iran or North Korea, is irrational. In fact, they are pursuing their interests as they see them. We may disagree with that in a very rational way. It's very clear that the Iranian regime is not suicidal, judged purely by the fact that the Ayatollah is hiding in a bunker right now and has no interest
That's
in dying.
true.
Look, I think the case against the Iranian nuclear program is actually a very simple one. A, you want fewer states out there to have nuclear weapons, period, because the more states that have nuclear weapons, the more there's a danger of a nuclear war that can destroy humanity. And more specifically, a state that has an explicit ideology to scream death to America, death to Israel, probably should not have nuclear weapons. And a state that has committed numerous offenses against our country, starting in 1979 with the takeover of our embassy and holding our diplomats hostage, to killing of our CIA chief of station in Beirut in the 1980s and kidnapping a number of Americans there. And then more recently, maiming and killing over 1,000 American servicemen in Iraq. That state probably is not in our best interest for that state to have a nuclear weapon. Now,
Peter,
you can
thank
argue what to be doing to stop that and whether going to war with them or bombing them is a good idea or not. But the idea that we should stop them from having nuclear weapons, I don't think is a controversial one.
They say that something that's easy is like a walk in the park. Well, easier than a walk in the park, hit the subscribe button, be part of the two-way community, never miss an episode, be part of our conversations. Thank you for your service to America.